Okay, and then into your wheelhouse, monetary policy. How does that contribute to wealth concentration? Obviously, we've seen a massive increase in wealth concentration during the last 12 to 24 months with COVID policies. But can you just explain that?
So this is where I disagree with some of the common narratives.
Great.
Among other people, I agree with. So basically, there's the argument that QE grows wealth concentration and that low interest rates grow wealth concentration. It's actually a lot of that is true, right? So the straightforward case there is that those things primarily boost asset prices, and who owns most assets? The rich. So that boosts the net worth of the rich without really helping the poor. Now, if we were to then run the data and we say, okay, let's test if that's actually happening, if that theory is true, we should look across countries on the world and see that the countries with the most QE relative to their GDP and the lowest interest rates for longest should have the most wealth concentration, or at least that should be the general trend. And instead, we find there's either no correlation, there's actually an inverse correlation, where the countries that did the most QE and have the lowest interest rates, like Japan, have among the lowest wealth concentration. Then you have countries like Europe that were kind of in the middle, and they're usually in the middle in terms of wealth concentration. And then in the developed world, the United States did less QE as a percentage of GDP and has had higher average interest rates than Japan, Europe, and we have the most wealth concentration. So obviously, there's more moving parts here than just that. So it's a lot of people are like to say it's only the Fed's fault or it's only this, and that's where I bring it back and say it's actually there's so many moving parts here that's a lot more complex. And a general theme I would say is that it's more about fiscal policy differences than QE differences. So QE as its own, I think, when you boost asset prices, that benefits the rich. But a lot of what QE is doing is funding fiscal deficits, right? And so you're monetizing fiscal deficits, especially if if the central bank holds that debt for the long term. So then the question becomes, what are those fiscal deficits being spent on? Right. So in Japan, they don't spend almost any money on their military as a percentage of their GDP. They don't, they basically they have among the cheapest healthcare per capita in the world, despite being one of the oldest populations in the world. They're and there's a bunch of things that go into that. And so because it's kind of domestic funding, it's kind of spent on the people, it's, reasonable tax environment, that wealth doesn't kind of circulate to the top. Whereas if you say take all those deficits, spend it on the military industrial complex, give basically Amazon all the tax cuts you want to give them, you keep kind of labor payroll taxes pretty high, you're gonna channel that wealth towards the top. And so that's why I describe it more as being a fiscal phenomenon, fiscal differences than QE alone.